Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready for the summer? Are you ready for the sunshine? Are you ready for the fresh and green, the apple trees, and a whole lot of food? Are you ready for the summer? Are you ready for the hot nights? Are you ready for the firelight, and a whole lot of food? No more petrol, no more brush, no more teachers, dirty looks, no more dance and history. Summertime and free. Are you ready for the summer? Are you ready for the good times? Are you ready for the summertime? In the summer's rain. No more petrol, no more brush, no more teachers, dirty looks, no more dance and history. Summertime and free. Are you ready for the summer? Are you ready for the good times? Are you ready for the summertime? In the summer's rain.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize for that. I don't make the decisions around here as it pertains to this show. My job is to sit here, say a couple of introductory lines, remind Mark of things he may have forgotten along the way, say something intelligent every now and then, go off on occasion at bad reviewers incapable of objectivity or critical thinking skills, and that's kind of my job. So when Mark says, hey, we're changing the intro music in line with it now being the summer blockbuster season, I just kind of have to go, yeah, sure, sounds good. Whatever. I'm okay with it. Oh, I hate that song. It grates on my nerves, and I'm going to say that every single time we do this. Partially because I don't like kids. I apologize for nothing as far as that's concerned, by the way. Anyway, this is the Radulich and Broadcasting Network Movie Review Club. I'm Robert Winfree. Mark Radulich is responsible for that song. So direct all of your anger at him, please. How you doing, Mark?
What a curmudgeon you are. Are You Ready for the Summer is hilarious. And I think it absolutely reflects the excitement we have. Look, other than the Christmas season, this is my favorite time of year. The summer blockbuster season, I look forward to it all year long. When Christmas turns to January and we turn the calendar to the next year, I'm always a little depressed because we're the furthest we can be away from the summer blockbuster season and Christmas. And I have to wait a whole 6 months before monsters start tearing cities apart and comic books come to life. So yeah, are you ready for the summer? It's like, are you ready for some football, only better? You need to embrace this. And I'll tell you another thing, Robert Winfree. I do not run a dictatorship here. I gave you full vote on how we conduct this show, and you said, okay, so what gives you the right to come on here and then lambaste me and my decision, making me look to be some sort of tyrant, twisting your arm against your will, making you listen to the Meatballs theme? How dare you, sir? How dare you?
In my defense, since you're going to bring up the fact that, yes, I did say I don't actually care, and you told me we were going to do this, I did also tell you that, yeah, I'm going to lambaste this every single opening.
Okay. I told you you can say you hate it, but don't say this was foisted upon you as some sort of burden.
Well, you know what? It's too easy. I'm not going there. All right.
The white man's burden, is that where we were headed with this?
Well, carrying you for every show.
You carry me. Okay.
That type of joke.
You couldn't carry my jock, Winfree. Let's get on with this.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to.
Fair point.
All right. Tonight we are reviewing Captain America Civil War, which has done massive numbers at the box office. This thing's already at like $700 million worldwide. It's stupid.
Number 5 for the year.
Stupidly successful. Marvel movies tend to be that way as long as they're not objectively bad, and even if they are, they tend to pull through all right. This is a adaptation of a massive crossover event that took place through all of Marvel's publications a few years back. It's widely kind of bemoaned as an event. There's a lot of missed opportunities. There's a lot of substandard stuff in there. And if you don't believe me, feel free to go into the archives and listen to the review on source material that Jesse Starcher hosted about the Civil War event. There's some good in there. There's a fair amount of bad. A lot of missed opportunities, things like that. Unfortunately, not quite as many in the movie. Very few objectively bad things, a few missed opportunities, to be sure, that Mark and I are going to talk about. But they cut out a lot of the chaff from the story, they adjusted the kind of kickstarting events. Just, did what you had to do when you're adapting something. And on the whole, I think they did a fairly good job.
Can I
the movie
put in here for 1 second?
Yeah.
Captain America Civil War is really the third and final chapter of the Captain America Winter Soldier story that was started in the first Captain America. You have Captain America's origins and the loss of his friend Bucky as he falls off the train. The second chapter picks up years later, where Bucky has become an assassin for the Soviets, while Captain America is unthawed and becomes a hammer for S.H.I.E.L.D. and subsequently takes S.H.I.E.L.D. down because it's filled with hot. This is really this movie had as much to do with the comic book story Civil War as it did with another comic book series. It was a 5-part series, if I remember correctly, that took place only in, I believe, the Avengers story. It was called Avengers Disassembled. And essentially what happens there is that the Scarlet Witch was insane, or at that point she had already been insane, and was causing massive amounts of problems that caused every Avenger to come out of the woodwork to fight off Skrulls and to fight off other massive armies that she kept conjuring up. And as it turns out, it was, by the end of it, the Avengers had caused so much damage and they had become so fractured that Tony said, I can no longer continue to support the Avengers, and withdrew his financial support. And the whole thing closed down, and the Avengers all went their separate ways. And Scarlet Witch, for her part, was taken to Genosha with Magneto. So, in a way, I was jokingly referring to this as this isn't so much Captain America Civil War as it is Avengers Disassembled. And it does have some similarities to that storyline. In this movie, Scarlet Witch is sort of the final straw that breaks the camel's back, that brings out the Sokovia Accords. In Avengers Disassembled, she's the entire reason they're having problems in the first place. So, and by the end of both, the Avengers were in shambles. And I say all that because I think it goes to a bigger issue with Marvel movies, which is I think they draw upon certain threads from the comic books, but they can never truly do them justice would be the wrong phrase. They can never truly adapt them. One of our good friends has a serious problem with this. The comic book movies seldom resemble the plots from the actual comic books. And there's a reason, part of the reason that happens is some of these are very hard to adapt to movies. To have adapted the entire Civil War storyline would have required about 1,000 more characters.
A massive crossover. It wouldn't have been just a movie. You would have had a bunch of characters. There would have been a television season, a movie, another television season, then a climactic movie. That's how big that event was for those of you who don't follow comic books all that much.
There's a line in the comic book series where Spider-Man takes off his mask and says, "Hello, my name is Peter Parker, and I have been Spider-Man since the age of 15."
J. Jonah Jameson promptly faints.
Which is great. It's like the best part of the comic. But we're living in a world where Spider-Man hasn't even been established yet until this movie, and he's like 12. So I just wanted to point that out there. It's going to be the same thing with the Infinity War. Will there be threads from what presumably is the Infinity Gauntlet storyline? Probably, but we haven't established who Adam Warlock is yet, or if he exists in this universe, nor do we have access to the Silver Surfer character. So already right there, the conclusion of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline can't be used. So I just wanted to say that in judging Captain America: Civil War, you really have to judge it much like we talked about on Long Road to Ruin and the Hunger Games. You have to judge it as, does it work by itself as a movie without relying on any of the source material? Because if you start comparing to the source material, there's almost no conversation to be had here. They could have called this Captain America ham sandwich, and it would have had as just to do with Civil War as this movie actually did.
Yeah, that's very true. I only really had one major gripe when because I didn't follow Civil War all that closely. I know the adaptations because it's been adapted a few times, not to movie format, but it's a very popular kind of subject material for a couple of different game adaptations that they've done, or things like that. So and of course I read synopsis of it. My comic knowledge is much more ancillary than firsthand. But I only really had one major complaint when it comes to how they handled, marrying those two source materials together into this movie, and I'll get to it in a minute or two, because it really bugged me in a couple of different ways.
All right, so let's get into the plot.
All right, this movie opens with the Avengers tracking Crossbones, Frank Grillo, who was in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. He is trying to steal some kind of biological agent. It's never made clear, but it's biological weapons. Specificity is not always required. We all understand that they're bad. They go through a protracted action sequence wherein they finally do kind of corner him. He blows himself up. The explosion is contained by the Scarlet Witch's powers, but it's a massive an explosion, and she can't contain it for the duration of its energy release. More importantly, the way she contains it doesn't allow the energy to properly release, so she tries to throw it off of the ground and up into the sky, but buildings, so once it releases, it still damages the building. Never mind that had it actually gone off on the ground, the damage would have been so much more catastrophic. But there's still issues. There are casualties. Civilians die, including a few Wakandans who happen to be there on some kind of peace journey. A mission from Peace, Wakanda trying to integrate itself into contemporary society instead of being as isolationist as it has been up to that point. So the Wakandan chief comes out and says, the Avengers, they need oversight. Tony Stark gets blindsided by the mother of a kid who died in Sokovia when they stopped Ultron. Now, Tony Stark's ego being what it is and being emotionally fragile, he doesn't take this very well. I have a whole discussion about Tony Stark as it pertains to this movie in particular. And so between external pressure and some internal pressure, the current, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State?
Secretary of Defense.
Defense, thank you. General Ross, good old Thunderbolt Ross, William Hurt reprising his role from the rather abominable Edward Norton Incredible Hulk movie. Ugh, that movie.
Stop it.
You and I have had that discussion, Mark. We both know I'm right.
Moving on.
Anyway, so he presents a group, a new series of rules, the Sokovia Accords, that the United Nations has drafted. 117 members of the UN want this thing in place. It means the Avengers now only operate where and when they receive approval from this oversight panel that would be appointed over them. Iron Man, Tony Stark thinks this is a great idea because he feels tons of guilt and doesn't want responsibility. Don Cheadle, War Machine also thinks this is a good idea because whatever Tony does, he does. I assume that's all I've got for that one, really.
Well, can I weigh in here?
By all means.
Look, he's a soldier. He was in the Air Force, I think it was.
Yeah.
He's used to following a command structure. He sees the Avengers as a private army, and every army needs people making decisions as to when and where to send that army in. And he's not wrong. I think I'm more sympathetic to his point of view than I am crazy bastard Tony Stark, who's completely ruled by his emotions. And I guess we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, Stark as a character bears some scrutiny in this particular film.
Here, let me jump in here real quick, and then I'll pass it back. Basically, everybody on Team Stark. You have Don Cheadle, who sees the Avengers as an army that needs supervision. You have Scarlet Witch, you have Black Widow, who's a pragmatist and basically says, this is going to happen whether we support it or not, and I would rather be out there doing my job than not, so I'm signing on for this. The Vision sort of sees it as a mathematical equation of, for every metahuman that comes up out of hiding and shows themselves to be, more extinction level events keep happening. And that with some dampeners, some controls, they can pull back on the amount of extinction level events that keep occurring since the Avengers first formed. So for him, it's a mathematical. It's a mathematical equation. It's a mathematical necessity. Black Panther is completely motivated by revenge.
Yeah.
In fact, he's not an Avenger. His role in this thing and his willingness to side with Tony is essentially he's opposite the Winter Soldier, which you haven't gotten to yet. But that's the only reason why he's on Team Stark, basically, is that Bucky is on Team Cap. That's it. It has nothing to do with the Sokovia Accords. Spider-Man, same thing. He was recruited, and he was fed a bunch of information, and he was given an upgrade and sort of taken on as sort of a son like relationship with father-son relationship with Tony Stark. So that's pretty much all of Team Iron Man. Team Cap. Cap looks at the Sokovia Accords and says, it wasn't that long ago I had to bring down the entire SHIELD institution because it was filled with Hydra. And he says it in the movie.
I don't trust you people. You're still run by politicians who all have your own personal agendas. I was waiting for Cap to just kind of raise an eyebrow and look at Tony and go, have you ever watched a UN meeting?
Yeah. There's been a couple of reviewers who have said the same thing. They're like, it's not believable that anyone would want to work for the UN after seeing how they operate. But that aside, in this world, the UN's a functioning institution. But he says, the safest hands are our own. If I see a situation pointed south, I'm not going to sit there and let it happen. And he's right too. Have you ever talked to a soldier in Iraq? And I'm not going to go on a political rant here. This is a fact. There are soldiers in Iraq who don't want to. Who it's not a matter of not wanting to be there because they don't want to be in danger. They don't think the mission statement is a good one. They don't think the mission is a good one. They feel like the people in charge sent them into an untenable, unwinnable situation. So imagine if you're Captain America and the UN sends you into a situation that you don't personally agree with. Only you're fucking Captain America and not, a guy who enlisted in the U.S. Army. So that's the parallel there. The Winter Soldier is framed for a bombing he did not commit and is wanted by the government and therefore on Team Cap. The Scarlet Witch is incredibly powerful. She just accidentally murdered a whole bunch of Wakandans, and she is being held captive in the Avengers compound. So she is essentially on Team Cap or be a prisoner was her choice. They recruit out of retirement Hawkeye.
Hawkeye's awesome.
Who essentially joins Team Cap because Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. I don't know. I don't really know why he is there.
Because he doesn't like the agreements as put forth, because he feels obligated to Scarlet Witch a little bit.
Okay.
Because I imagine that his response when Cap asked him to come back and explain what was happening was, well, I tend to think you're right, and I never cared too much for the rules anyway, because Hawkeye's awesome.
I think that the counter argument to Tony is to the whole Sokovia Award is, well, Tony supports it. Well, fuck that. That's the guy that built Ultron.
Yeah, that could easily. And then they also recruit Scott Lang, the Ant-Man, because he's a thief anyway.
And lastly is Falcon, who was already on Team Cap and is
he is to Captain America what Rhodey is to Iron Man.
Right. All right. So we're now up to the point where they frame Bucky. Go.
Yeah. There's a bombing outside of UN conference in Vienna when the Sokovia Accords are to be ratified. Among the dead is the King of Wakanda, T'Chaka. His son T'Challa is there, better known as the Black Panther. He takes up that mantle and swears revenge against Bucky, who is framed for this by Zemo, who is kind of a bit background player for the entire movie. And quite honestly, this movie might be better off without Zemo. Mark and I will get into that in a minute or two. But everyone's now looking for Bucky, and everyone wants just to kill him. They don't want to bring him in. They just want him dead. And that's kind of Cap's sticking point is, well, he's my friend. And if he has to get brought in, fine, I'm doing it, and we're not going to just summarily execute him.
And it was, just real quick, he asked like a very important question. He was like, when this whole thing is going down, he was like, okay, so he's a wanted man. Does he get a lawyer? Are you just throwing him in? I mean, you're saying he's committed a crime. Does he get due process? Or are we just, now we're going to start throwing people into dungeons? That's a legitimate question that he never gets an answer to.
It's an extraordinarily legitimate question, and Martin Freeman gives the best kind of smarmy smile and just kind of dismissive laugh as he asks it. Martin Freeman totally underutilized in this film, but really good in that kind of supporting role. So anyway, Cap, Falcon, and Bucky go on the run. They are aided by Agent 13, better known as Sharon Carter, who is basically useless. I have very little use for the character, and the actress I have less use for.
Oh, I think you're being entirely unfair, but go on.
Emily Van Camp is useless, and has been for the duration of her television acting career, much less film.
Great, you're useless. Get on with this.
I am most certainly not useless. If I wasn't here, you'd be talking to yourself, and you wouldn't have anyone to abuse.
Fair point, but still, you're being a little too hard on the Beaver there, Ward. Now get on with this.
I really just have no use for her at all.
So you said.
Anyway, Bucky reveals to Cap that he was not the only Winter Soldier. There were 4 or 5 others. And they are more powerful than he is. And we're led to believe Zemo wants to revive them and set them loose, topple empires. And these are the people that could do it. So Cap and Bucky and his group are trying to head off Zemo, which doesn't really work. Stark and his group want to bring him in, want to arrest him and bring him in. This leads to a big fight in the German airport, which is a pretty well-done fight sequence, all things considered. It ends with Cap and Bucky and T'Challa, I believe eventually, escaping from everyone else and going off to Siberia to stop Zemo from resurrecting more super soldiers. Everyone else goes to jail, which actually leads to a really great scene when Hawkeye reads the absolute riot act to Tony Stark. They all get thrown in a supermax prison that's, in the middle of the ocean. It's a terrible place to be. And Stark's a little bit off-put that, his former teammates are here, but, Secretary of Defense Ross just doesn't care. he's anti-superhuman anyway because, he doesn't like the Hulk. And to be fair, Mark's the only one who likes the Hulk.
Oh, you devil you.
But he is able to convince Falcon to tell him where Cap was going. He shows up at this facility, only no, Zemo was playing them all along because, you see, the FBI knew the CIA was setting them up with the NSA. Okay, it's not quite that bad, but it's a tad convoluted and more than a little contrived. Zemo showed up there and executed these people. He just wanted to lure Cap and Bucky and Stark into the same place at the same time so he could reveal to Tony Stark that back in 1991 it was a currently revived Bucky Barnes that killed his parents and stole some of the technology that made more super soldiers possible.
Yes, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, was the author of all of Tony Stark's pain.
That's not... I wanted to bust that gag out again, but after seeing it, I just don't find it accurate.
I'm the author of all your pain, Tony.
Doesn't
and I
work,
wasn't even
Mark.
in control of myself.
Doesn't work, Mark.
I think it does.
It really doesn't.
Go on.
So anyway, there's a final fight between the two of them and Iron Man and Stark, who again took this news rather badly. It ends with Captain America defeating Tony. He jams his shield into his power core. Great moment, too, because he could have killed him. Deliberately chose not to because he's Captain America, damn it. That disables Stark, helps Bucky up, walks out, leaves the shield behind as, just kind of a symbol of, no, I may not be Captain America anymore, but I'm still going to do the right thing. This will lead to the next one being titled Steve Rogers Super Soldier. And those of us who suffered through that comic run are going to just kind of roll our eyes.
Maybe they'll make him a U.S. agent.
Oh, stop. T'Challa apprehends Zemo, who orchestrated all of these events because his family died during the Sokovia incident. T'Challa stops him from killing himself. I'm not quite sure what purpose that served, but I'm a big believer in just letting people off themselves as a general rule, especially when they're giant bags of shit, like Zemo.
Uh-huh.
The movie ends with a letter from Steve being delivered to Tony. Steve, resigns from the Avengers. Have fun with that. You go ahead and dance for the UN. I'm not going to. I really do hope we get a follow-up where Tony, ADD and narcissistic as he is, has to actually deal with the bureaucracy in place at the UN, because I just want a shot of him holding his head in his hands in just utter frustration going, yeah, Steve was right.
Oh, they have to at some point show the Avengers standing idly by while villagers are mowed down. Because the UN said, do not get involved in
the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah, the Rwanda was exactly what I was thinking of, or the Congo or something like that. So so you have a warlord shooting a bunch of heroin-soaked children.
Yeah, you think Mark's making a joke when he says that? He's really not. That type of stuff happens.
And the UN stands idly by.
Yeah.
Doesn't get involved. It's essentially, it's an old Eddie Izzard joke. Oh, you want to kill your own people? Well, we're fine with that. We've been trying to kill you for years. We think it's great you're going to do it yourself. It's only when you start killing other people that we start to get upset.
And even then, oh boy, those economic sanctions.
All right. So in the after credits,
the point being there that it ends with Stark. He's helping Rhodey learn how to walk again, because when they were in their big fight, Rhodey got shot down and now he's kind of paralyzed. So Stark is working on something to help him walk again. The Vision is still there, but he's just weird, which is fine because it's awesome, but he's just weird. The Avengers have fractured, but Rogers left. We get a little bit of hope at the end because while Captain America may have resigned, he rescues his friends from prison because he's Captain America, damn it. And just leaves Stark with the knowledge that, if you ever actually really need us, we'll be there and we'll be, happy to help out. But in the interim, you deal with your bureaucracy. I'll deal with things the way I think they should be dealt with. And then Bucky Barnes goes back into stasis in the nation of Wakanda because once T'Challa realized that it was actually Zemo that killed his father, he had the appropriate response of, oh, well, then I probably, you're the one who actually did this. My rage is now directed at you. Zemo winds up in a small box for a couple of movies. He'll get out again. I have little doubt, because that's how these things go. Anyway, so in Wakanda, that's going to be the base of operations for Rogers for a little bit, because they're fugitives, but Wakanda, for anyone who knows anything about the history of that fictional nation, they don't take shit. And they're very isolationist. They have been forever. They don't like people. So there's actually the last line that T'Challa says, Rogers just says, if they ever find out you're holding Bucky, they're going to come for him. His response is, let them try. Wakanda is home to the only natural source of vibranium on the planet. They're stupidly advanced technologically. They're full. It's not a good place if they don't want you there. It's never been conquered. And then roll credits. The final post-credit scene is, hey, there's a Spider-Man movie coming up. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, I was really unimpressed with that very last scene. All right, so let's talk about this movie. 90% of it's okay. People are getting a little crazy out there. They're like, oh my God, it's the best comic book movie ever. It's not bad. It's good. It's got some narrative problems. It's got a villain problem once again. There are some acting choices, and we're going to talk about one specifically that I talked about it on Facebook and Twitter, and people were like, "Ooh, you seem rather nonplussed by this whole thing." I will explain myself fully because Robert and I had a pre-meeting discussion about this movie and got me rethinking my point, and it still stands, but I've changed a little bit of it. I now understand. I've refocused my rage, as it were. But yeah, there are some acting choices that are made that are incongruent with the action going on at the time. Like I said, it's fine. It's entertaining. I enjoy watching it, but people are going insane with, oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's the greatest comic book movie. It's not better than The Winter Soldier. So right there, it's not better. It's not the best comic book movie I've ever seen. It's also getting a lot of comparisons to Batman v Superman. I'm not going to rehash that whole thing again. If you want to know my opinion of it, please go download. If you haven't heard it yet, go ahead and download our review of it from a few weeks back. It's in the archives on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. But I would say that, but I enjoyed that movie too. I thought this one was just as good. Maybe a little less narrative problems than that one had. But we're getting a little crazy. Well, I would say we're getting a little crazy with villains who have to depend on so many things going right. So many things going right. And depending on people not talking for their whole plan to work out. Because let's lay this out, okay? So Baron Zemo kills a psychiatrist, presumably, or psychologist, who is later going to be used to interview Bucky. He kills him, takes on his identity, also gets prosthetics so that he can look like Bucky, so that he can frame him for the bombing at the UN after the Sokovia Accords have been written and ostensibly have been signed. This is to set up. This is so that Captain America will try to save his friend, while Tony will try to hunt him down. and that will cause a fight between Captain America and Iron Man. That's his plan.
Would you believe that it's even more convoluted than that?
Well, I'm saying like that essentially was the start of his plan.
Well, the start of his plan is I need a mission report from this one mission that Bucky undertook in 91.
I hadn't even gotten to that. Hang on, I hadn't even gotten to that yet. Because what he says at the end is this whole thing was so that the Avengers would tear themselves apart. Then there's this side quest that he's on to find where the other Winter Soldiers are. And when he finds them, he shoots them and says, yeah, I don't want these maniacs running around. It's bad enough
What he was after was actually the physical documentation of Bucky's missions, which included the death of Stark's parents, and that's what he was going to use to kind of set Tony Stark off. So the whole point here is his first plan is, well, I got to get this mission report. In order to do that, I will go through this needlessly convoluted process to gain access to Bucky, so I can then find out where it's stored. Then I'm going to go to where it's stored, and I'm going to wait behind this in this bomb shelter for, boy, I really hope Captain America and Bucky Barnes and Tony Stark to come so I can finally set them against each other even more than they already are.
Okay,
and then I'll go off myself.
Let me stop you there. If you look at who's on Team Stark versus Team Cap really should have been annihilated. Okay? Spider-Man, super strength, webbing, Vision, can change density and has the Mind Stone for fuck's sake. Tony Stark, big robot weapons. War Machines, even more robot weapons. So and I'm not counting the Scarlet Witch. So right there you have and Black Panther, okay, who's got indestructible armor on and claws. You have 6 people who can kick the shit out of just about anybody. They had one heavy hitter on, 2 if you count Ant-Man. You made 2 heavy hitters on Team Cap. They should have been slaughtered. And had they been slaughtered, I'm not entirely sure what Helmut Zemo's plan would have been after that. Like, okay, I guess you win because they want because Team Iron Man stopped Team Cap from stealing a Quinjet and coming to Siberia. And so if the whole thing was like, oh, I want Tony to find out that the Winter Soldier killed his parents so that he'll go after Captain America. They were already going after Captain America. It started with the whole chase scene, and Don Cheadle War Machine actually says, congratulations, Cap, you're now a criminal. This is what I mean by, for people who are a little insane when they say, oh, this is the greatest movie ever. The plot of this makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, you could easily remove Zemo from this entire equation. I mean,
we were talking earlier, and I'll just throw this out there. I'm not entirely sure if you even responded to it. You could have made the villain General Ross or Secretary Ross. You could have had Secretary Ross pay somebody to frame Bucky so that he would have an issue to play off of to keep the Avengers fighting amongst themselves and basically dispatch the ones that weren't going to sign the Accord. And that would have been plot enough. You really didn't need Helmut Zemo in this movie at all, nor did you need his whole, this is all about revenge for you for what happened in Age of Ultron. A much tighter, much simpler plot would have simply been essentially Ross goes to the Avengers, says, sign this or go into retirement, and when Rogers and a handful of them won't sign the thing, he sets up, he has Crossbones or somebody else set up the bombing to frame Bucky so that Stark and the Loyalists essentially have a reason to bring them in. That would have had them fighting. That would have had chases. That would have been plenty for for all of our superheroes to contend with, because now Team Cap are a bunch of outlaws running from Stark's Avengers. And I would have thought that would have been, to me, that would have been much more interesting. And I guess at the end, you could have still done the reveal about the Winter Soldier killing Tony's parents, but I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, I don't want to jump all over the place, but I really want to talk about that end sequence. So just in dealing with the thin, ridiculous plot, they had a good enough plot there, and they tossed it. This has been in a lot of the reviews, actually. They had a really big piece of meat that you could have chewed on with the whole Sokovia Accords, and it gets tossed aside so that they can deal with this revenge tale, which didn't need to be there in the first place, and in a lot of ways was very convoluted.
Yeah, just again, I agree with your assessment about how to make this a stronger film. There's a couple of things. I generally enjoyed this movie. A lot of the action is framed well. The opening action set piece in Uganda or wherever, not so much. Entirely too much shaky cam.
Yeah, why does everything have to be the Bourne Identity?
Because people don't realize that while something was innovative at the time, not only has it passed, but you don't have Paul Greengrass's sensibilities.
I find it very distracting. Like, again, I enjoyed the fight scenes by and large, and certainly the airport scene, which they shot in IMAX, was a very fun, very enjoyable sort of Super Bowl of comic book fight sequence. I thought that whole beginning scene in Lagos, I just felt like, okay, it's the Bourne Identity with superheroes, and it's making my eyes twitch.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of a lot of the way that was framed.
Also, poor Crossbones.
Yeah, I don't care. He died. He's gone. Be happy.
But that's the thing is, like, I don't understand why they needed to build that prison. They're killing all of the villains. Nobody makes it out of these movies alive anymore.
Well, in fairness, Crossbones killed himself.
All right, I suppose. What else? So you're talking about the action sequences.
Yeah, that one didn't sit well with me. Most of the rest of them were fine. That chase sequence through, I think it's through Germany, or
Bucharest.
No, Bucharest is a different one. The one where they get captured is in Germany.
Oh, okay.
No, the Bucharest one is pretty good too. There's a really good some hallway fight sequences there. Cap's reunion with Bucky is pretty is solid. Then again, the one in Germany includes a couple of nice car chase sequences that are executed very well. The big airport fight scene I have zero complaints about that. Basically top to bottom, it's phenomenal. Including the surprise reveal that Stephen Lang now has figured out how to grow as Ant-Man.
Yes.
I really have to say this. Paul Rudd was a great addition. He's a little one note in Ant-Man. Not a whole lot, but a little. But as an added spice to this, when he infiltrates Tony's armor and Tony can hear him, and who is this? This is your conscience. We don't talk that much these days.
This movie needed levity, and it found it in Spider-Man, Ant-Man, some of the other sequences, and it absolutely needed to be there. You were dealing with a lot of heavy stuff. This is one of the more morose movies coming out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so it's definitely offset by performances that are. It's good that they are one note. I was happy that I was glad that some of the stuff with Vision was sort of some throwaway humor. Stuff with Ant-Man was some throwaway humor. Spider-Man. And we have to talk briefly about Spider-Man because I have some positive and some negative to say about that. There was good use of humor here for characters where there was the visual of watching them fight and do their thing, but they basically served just to present some much needed comedy, much needed levity to the narrative.
Yeah, since you want to talk about Spider-Man, I have a couple of other things that we can get to after that. But yeah, this is the first time.
Are you done talking about the fight sequences?
Well, real briefly, I really liked the one. There's a big stretch of the final one between Bucky and Tony and Steve. After Bucky gets taken out of that equation, his prosthetic arm gets blown off. After that, and we just get Cap and Iron Man going at it. It's fine when it's kind of a 2-on-1 scenario for a while, but once it gets down to just those two, we finally get a lot more emotion into the fight itself, and that kind of comes across through the action. There's some really good sequences with Cap just kind of beating up his armor, and Stark being reminded that no, you can't beat this guy hand to hand. And then, we'll talk about this in a bit because it plays into your big gripe with kind of the finale. Stark is theoretically going berserk, and acting or directing choice, whatever led to the performance being what it was, didn't come across that well as far as where the character's mental and emotional state at that particular point in time. And then as he starts losing, because there's still kind of two of them, and because Captain America will not lay down. If he's in the right, he's gonna keep fighting. And there's right at the end, right at the final bit of that fight, Tony's emotionally kind of a wreck, and he's fighting back, and Cap's winning, and he's on top of him, and he's hammering him with the shield. Takes his helmet off, raises the shield, and it looks like Stark raises his hands to protect his head. That doesn't work because it's a vibranium shield. It's still going to crush your skull if he wants it to. And instead, Rogers takes out his power core. And it's this really, even the way it's presented, it's this really weird, in a good way, emotional offset in the sense that you suddenly kind of realize that Stark was out of control there. And even though Cap was fighting for his life in a very real sense, he maintained enough composure to understand the situation he was in and what he was trying to do. He was not trying to kill anyone. He was simply trying to get Stark out of his bloodlust, and then get Bucky to where he can be for help. The way it was framed in terms of action and the way it was framed in terms of the overall narrative really worked for me. And that's the last thing I kind of wanted to praise there. So you wanted to talk about Spider-Man.
Let me set this up very quickly. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent. Please don't drag me into a 2-hour conversation about the previous Spider-Man movies. But I need to bring them up to give context to what I'm about to say about Tom Holland's performance. I liked Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man. My problems with the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans is the multiplicity effect of the villains and the poor writing of Spider-Man 3. Because, I think people forgotten that Spider-Man 2 was awesome. My only objection to Peter Parker's portrayal was he was too stuck on Mary Jane. The comic book character was never that stuck on Mary Jane. Yeah, he married her at one point, and they have depending on which universe we were in, I think they may have even had a kid. But everything was about her and not about his own conviction to do right because of his guilt over Uncle Ben. And that annoyed me. But that was a choice by the directors and the producers of the thing to make the Spider-Man trilogy more of a love story. But the actual acting in the portrayal of Peter Parker / Spider-Man by Tobey Maguire, I thought was good. And I know this is probably going to discredit me in a lot of people's eyes, but I loved The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And when it was over, I said, finally, somebody gets how to play this character. I thought Andrew Garfield, especially in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I thought it was phenomenal. I'm not talking necessarily about the narrative, I'm talking about the portrayal of the character. Now, some people might get caught up, get hung up on the fact that it's a little too emo, a little too modern. But I thought Andrew Garfield truly captured the spirit of Peter Parker. Maybe, with the volume turned up a little bit, maybe a little modern edge to him. But overall, I walked out of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and the first thing I remember tweeting about it was, finally, we got the Spider-Man we've always deserved. So, hearing people going into Captain America, or rather coming out of Captain America going, finally, this is the Spider-Man we've been looking for. Okay. I guess if you're talking Spider-Man Year One, Tom Holland did a good job of portraying a very, very young Spider-Man, the youngest we've seen to date. And for the role he had in this movie of the aw shucks, I'm a little mice among gods type of Spider-Man, I was amused. I thought Tom Holland did an excellent job of portraying almost a fish out of water, I'm a mouse among gods type of character. I don't think I can handle that for 2 hours, though. I'm not looking forward to Homecoming because I don't know if I can handle the performance I just saw in Civil War for 2 fucking hours. And maybe it won't be like that. Maybe it'll be a little bit more of what we got in some of the fighting sequences where he was, wisecracking and having a good time. But if we're gonna get a lot more aw shucks and oh my god, my hero kind of a thing, I'm gonna be chewing on my seat. For me, the jury's still out on this. It was a 50% good, 50% bad in total portrayal of Peter Parker and Spider-Man in this movie, and to date, just based on what I've seen, in my own personal opinion, in my own personal preferences, I think Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the tops. So we'll see. I'm hoping next year Homecoming is amazing and that Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man is spot on. But if it's too much like it was here, it's going to be unfucking bearable. Robert?
I don't have the same attachment to Spider-Man that a lot of comic book fans do. And I think it's also, I don't have anything against the character, but I know a lot of people who, that is the greatest superhero for them. And not just because Stan Lee has said so. And I don't have that relationship with the character. I wonder if it's a East Coast thing.
I did like that. Where are you from? I'm from Queens, Brooklyn.
Can I just say real briefly that I really liked those bits when Cap and Spider-Man interacted, because those two, in almost every iteration, through whatever medium, have a very interesting relationship. The one that really kind of struck me, and I think there are elements of this that have the same tone, but from the, what was it? The Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated series. There's a particular episode, and it's in the wake of the Skrull invasion. And one of the Skrulls for all of that was Captain America, and people are very angry at him, even though he was a shape-shifting alien. So it wasn't actually Captain America, it was an alien. But he was one of the faces, kind of out there, and people feel very mistrustful of him. And his response is just to kind of be very stoic about it. And just, their anger is, I understand why they're angry. They have a right to be. I'm okay with it. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and they're going to come around. And in that same episode, he interacts with Spider-Man, who is constantly maligned, by the Daily Bugle, and his public image is not something he cares about in the sense that he's still doing the right thing. But when he asks Cap specifically, how do you deal with this? You're a hero. It wasn't even you. Again, his response is just, I'm going to keep being a hero. I'm going to keep doing the right thing. And they're either going to see that or they're not. Like, take you, for example. I know what the Daily Bugle says about you. I also know what I've heard from, EMTs and policemen and firemen who you have helped. I know who you are. It's not about being recognized. And there's a very interesting relationship between those two characters, and I really hope we get a little bit more of that, because we got bits of that in this. despite them being on opposite sides, there's still a bit of that kind of camaraderie there. But as for Tom Holland as Spider-Man, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm kind of like you in the sense that if it's that one note for an entire feature film, yeah, we're going to have problems. As a introduction for that character to this universe, essentially a minor role, larger narrative, you could have done a lot worse. I'm okay with it from that perspective.
Yeah, like I said, the jury's out. I thought he fit where he did. I thought his interactions with Tony were believable, one of the more believable parts of the movie. I'm interested to see where they go with this. I'm hoping, that's the whole point of what I said. I'm just hoping that what I got there wasn't the sum total of where they're going with this character, because if it is, it'll be, like I said, it will be unbearable, and it'll be a poor choice. As long
as the influence of Joe Quesada stays far, 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 far away from it, I think we're all good.
Okay, so we've talked about the fight scenes. We've talked about the villain and the lack of plot. We've talked about Spider-Man. Do we want to get into that last ending sequence where people can hear sort of why I ranted against it, or is there anything else you want to get into before we get there?
No, the other couple of things I want to talk about, I think, tie directly into that.
Okay.
Let me lead into that end sequence wherein you can start ranting about it. This is not a Captain America movie in the sense that the others have, where it is very much his character that is driving it. I'm righteously pissed that they took away one of Captain America's defining lines and speeches and gave it to someone else. I understand adapting source material. I understand changing things around. I really do. I'm very forgiving of that, as long as I don't have an emotional attachment to the source material. And boy, in a couple of years when we start doing Dark Tower movies, that's going to be a point of conflict for me. But at the moment, I'm okay with you making adaptations. The fact that they took, again, what I consider one of the defining moments, lines, characteristics of Captain America and gave it to someone else really does not sit well with me. But I've said what I'm going to say about that by and large. I also think they could have, even if they were going to go the way they did.
Well, what was the line?
Oh, his "No, you move" line.
Okay.
That speech he gives, it's actually in the Civil War comic, about it doesn't matter what the mob says or what the government says. If the whole world tells you something that you know is wrong is right, your job is not to go with them. Your job, when the whole world tells you to move, is to plant yourself by the river of truth and say, no, you move.
He ain't wrong.
No, he isn't. And it's, again, one of the defining moments in the existence of that character. It perfectly sums up so much of him, and they gave it to generic blonde number 37.
Yeah, I don't hate the woman the way that you do. I thought...
I don't hate her. I just have no use for her. Anyone else could have done that better.
I thought she was fine. I thought the role that she played was good. I thought the part she played in the character's life was quite serviceable. I thought they gave her plenty of important things to do leading up to some of the stuff that happens later in the movie. So I was fine with it, and I'm glad they finally kissed, because boy, not since Pacific Rim have I seen it. Will they or won't they go as long as that did without a payoff? So I'm glad there finally was one.
I even would have been happier had they actually made that, because they have her quoting the deceased Peggy Carter, which I can't tell you how much I would have preferred that had been even if you're going to have her inspire that speech from Cap, I would have so much preferred that been like a letter that she left to him, not too long before she passed, and that's where he gets it from.
That sequence where they show her funeral and the reactions and everything, it was very sad. I had a hard time with that. I don't quite know why, but I had a rough time with that whole sequence. His reaction, the funeral itself, everything. Maybe that's why I was a little more sympathetic to when they finally kissed, because it came out of that sequence. But okay, so
to set up your problems with Tony Stark's kind of rampage at the end. What I was going for, sorry, I got sidetracked there. What I meant to say was, this film deals with, from an arc perspective, a lot more Tony Stark than it does Steve Rogers. We are introduced to Stark in this movie, talking about how he never got over how he handled his parents' death, that he flat out stating that he ran away from dealing with his grief. We find out that Pepper has left him, mostly because Gwyneth Paltrow is apparently quite difficult to deal with. But his girlfriend is no longer with him. He's now dealing with guilt over the fact that his actions have caused, people's deaths, and he can't handle that because he's a malignant narcissist, and being confronted with his own shortcomings just makes him unhappy. As he presents his solution to his personal angst in the form of, hey, government oversight, his current one of his two best friends stands up to him and says, you're really wrong about this. This leads to...
Can I stop you there? I know without any of this we don't have a movie, but at some point I just wanted Steve to get up, strangle him, and say, you're the whole reason we're in this predicament, you fucking asshole. You're the one who, despite all of us telling you no, created Ultron. You're the one who keeps overreacting to what happened in New York. Without you, we don't have any fucking problems. Yes, what Wanda did was an accident. What you keep doing is a result of your own stupidity.
Yeah, Tony Stark spends almost the totality of this movie as a 10-pound bag of dicks.
and I desperately wanted Steve Rogers to tell him that.
I spent this entire movie wanting to strangle him, going, you made choices. You're engaged in saving the world. There's collateral damage. If you feel bad about that, then take off your uniform.
I wanted Tony to be like, to basically tell Tony and please take this to go and properly shove him up your ass. Nobody sitting at this table is responsible for anything that led to this. We didn't bring the stupid alien army here. We certainly didn't build Ultron. That's that guy over there. Go put him in the fucking raft.
And by the way, to all you people, this is my other thing, to all you people bitching about how we're saving your sorry asses, if you think you're better off without it, I'm happy to watch the world burn.
Yeah.
The MCU is in desperate need of Rorschach.
Not having a good time with the aliens as they were bombarding New York.
The MCU desperately needs a Rorschach moment, where everyone, the famous line from Watchmen, they'll look up and they'll cry, "Save us." I'll look back and whisper, "No."
Well, I mean, if you look at what starts this whole thing off is you have someone trying to steal a biological weapon in Lagos, who's going to deal an exponential more damage with that if he is successful. He is stopped, and there is collateral damage. Now, we fight wars, okay? We have rescue missions. We do all kinds of things in this world, and yes, sometimes innocent people get hurt. We just don't pack up our shit and go home. We're not. It isn't that simple, and it's almost unrealistic the way they got to. It's almost unrealistic that the thing that finally pushes it over the edge is what Wanda did, which was an accident. And as you said earlier,
well, I mean, it's realistic in the sense that it is the straw that breaks the camel's back.
But like I said, it's an accident, It's an accident that could have happened in any other situation. I mean, let us assume for a moment that that the Avengers were. Let's go back a year and say at the end of Age of Ultron, the Avengers are told disband or be imprisoned. And now there's no Avengers. There's still a guy out there running amok. Okay, there's still a guy out there named Frank Grillo who's dealing in weapons.
The actor.
Sorry, no, I thought Frank Grillo was the character Crossbones.
No, Frank Grillo is the actor who plays Crossbones.
What's his actual? What is Crossbones' real name then?
I don't know.
Who cares? All right, so there's still a Crossbones out there. He's still dealing in illegal weapons. He's still a terrorist, and pulls the exact same maneuver. Are you telling me that if they sent like a Delta Force or commandos in there to deal with it, there wouldn't have been collateral damage. There wouldn't have been innocent civilians killed. They were running over people in plain sight.
Yeah, it's again, the reaction that these people have to the Avengers negatively generally makes me go, "You're a bunch of idiots. Stop whining." Yeah,
well, that's my point. Is I accepted it. I accepted it because it was a small part of what's supposed to be a bigger story, and they had to get the kids to the mall somehow. So that way it was as good as any. But focusing back on Tony, I just wanted somebody to get up and say, "This is all your fault. None of this happens if you don't build Ultron." So
yeah,
why are you here?
I wanted him so, and finally we get a little bit of that. But anyway, to put my point in, there's this massive rift in the Avengers. He's fighting his best friend, James Rhodes gets paralyzed in that big fight. Then he goes to the raft to try and figure out where they've gone. And one of my favorite parts of this entire movie, he walks into the cell block. They're all in separate cells in a kind of a circle. Excuse me. He walks in, and you get this slow clap from Hawkeye, Clint Barton going, "Yay, everyone, the futurist is here. The futurist, he knows what's best for you, even if you disagree with it." It just leads to Barton kind of going after Stark for everything he's done recently, and it's utterly glorious. And part of that is because Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye is always a highlight whenever he's in one of these movies. His line about retirement always made me chuckle, too. So I guess golf's not for you, is it, Clint? Played 18. Shot 18. Can't seem to miss. Doesn't seem that fun. Anyway, so then now somewhat distrustful of the group that he's been supporting, emotionally kind of at the end of his rope, Stark goes to Siberia to join forces with Cap and Bucky in hopes of getting Zemo.
Oh, at this point, he's also been chewed out by the Secretary of State, who no longer believes he's competent enough to run this operation.
Yeah. And at which point he then mentions that, "No, feel free to call me. I don't mind putting you on hold." Which I got to laugh at the end when he does put him on hold. Because, Thunderbolt Ross is a douche. And that's fine, he's supposed to be. But watching him get his is always amusing. Anyway, so the point being, so much of this movie is designed to kind of set you up to where Tony is just kind of at the end of his rope. And then Zemo tips him way over the edge by showing him his parents being violently murdered by Bucky. Now, personally, I understand that. If I was standing next to a man and I saw a video of him violently murdering my parents, yeah, I'd go a little bit crazy too. Unfortunately, and this is where Mark's going to come in, and I'm going to shut up after this, choices made, be it acting, directing, writing, orders from on high, however we arrived at the execution of Tony Stark's meltdown, it does not come across as an emotional meltdown. Mark, the floor is yours.
All right. Two things before I get into this. One, I thought the entire end sequence, that whole third part of the story where that ends in Siberia, is way stupid, and it's almost so stupid that it took me out of the movie and made me enjoy it less, and it's a big source of my complaints. Number one, just separate from Tony and Robert Downey Jr.'s acting choices, the whole thing of why we needed the subplot on the Winter Soldiers that then weren't going to be used is beyond me. I thought we were getting set up for, like, not the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but I thought this was going to give rise to a bunch more Captain America villains, you know, and they were going to have fancy costumes and masks, and this guy was going to set them loose on Captain America and Bucky, and, you know, we were going to have, you know, a really fun action sequence. And no, I went to go look for these people so I could make sure they were dead, because I don't want people like you running around. I don't know why you needed them in the first place. They were not introduced anywhere else. So
it's the reddest of red herrings.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck are we watching here? So I was annoyed about that. But then everything leads up to this one big reveal. And the reveal, as you said, was that Bucky killed, by the way, brainwashed at the time, Bucky killed Tony Stark's parents, like 30 years ago. Okay. Tony Stark's immediate reaction to this is he calmly turns to Steve and says, "Did you know about this?" And Steve, you know, feeling a little guilty, feeling a little trapped, says, "Tony, I didn't know how to tell you." Or something along the lines of like I wasn't sure, I hadn't put all the pieces together. And the next thing you see, from what I recall, and this is my biggest gripe, is Tony calmly, with no emotion in his voice, just as plain as ordering a sandwich at a lunch counter, says, "Sorry, Steve, he killed my mom." And then he shoots Captain America.
You're jumping around a little bit there. That line comes in. He shoots Captain America, goes after Bucky. They tussle a little bit. Steve tries to distract him while Bucky escapes because he's an emotionally disturbed person. And Steve, trying to reason with him in some fashion, says, even if you, not only was he completely brainwashed at the time, this won't change anything. Now, these are very rational arguments, and if you've ever tried to be rational to an emotionally disturbed person, it doesn't work.
No,
I mean,
no,
Mark, you work in a jail. You know that doesn't work.
No,
but it's
I'm
what
right
you
there
do.
with you. I have no counter argument to that.
But it's what you do. It's all you can do to try and get through to them. And his response is perfectly in character. I don't care. He killed my mom.
Okay.
And again, I'm right there with you.
He says it. Okay.
But yeah, it's how he says it.
No emotion at all, and you know, and then we're off. So okay, yes, I jumped around a little bit, but essentially, he comes to Siberia with the knowledge that Bucky didn't bomb the UN, is there to assist Captain America and Bucky take down Zemo. Zemo says, "Here's footage of your parents being killed," at which point he loses all composure, all sense of right and wrong, decides to go on a murderous rampage with all the emotion of a vacuum cleaner salesman. That's when I threw my hands up at the movie and said, I don't fucking care about this anymore. I just want it to end now. Get this now. Show me a wrestling match, which is about what this has turned into, and get me out of this movie. If you are going to now, as I do with every one of these movie reviews, if I'm going to complain this much about something, I need to then come up with what would I want to see. I said when it was over that the Martha sequence in Batman v Superman was actually more believable. I've already been through that explanation, but just to give a comparison and what I'm looking for, look, murder is not something you do easily, okay? And rest assured, Tony was going to murder Bucky in cold blood. This wasn't a, shut him down, take him in.
Cold blood might be a bit of a stretch, but
was going to murder a human being.
Going to murder a human being, and then tried to murder Cap because he got between him. Again, clearly not in a rational state of mind.
So my point is, That's not something you do lightly.
Well, not if you're not a sociopath.
Right. So here's the thing. He came in there. Well, let me go back to Batman v Superman. So here you have Batman on the edge, going crazy, pushed to a murderous rage by the end of that fight, and ready to murder Superman. And Superman says something, anything, to try to get him to just stop and think for a moment, because even as he's dying, he's holding on to the fact that his mother's in danger. He's trying to and he had been trying to get that across to Batman for the duration of the fight. And that is, to me, why that scene succeeds and this one falls flat. Because if you're going to sit there and tell me that Tony Stark came there ready, willing, and able to assist Captain America in the takedown of Helmut Zemo, and then got summarily distracted by this horrible memory of the death of his parents, and now he just sees red, then show me him seeing red. What I said to Robert before this podcast started was how I would have shot that scene was I would have had him take out Captain America, and then in a murderous rage be saying, "You took everything from me." Boom, double repulsor rays on Bucky. Shoot his arm off, just keep hitting him and screaming the entire time. "You took everything. You killed my parents. I'll kill you because you have to die," And right before he nearly does kill him, Cap jumps on him, and now Bucky's out of the fight, sort of the way you book wrestling triple threat matches in the WWE. Now he's out of the fight, and it's a one-on-one between Captain America and Iron Man. Because he's not going to, get out of the way, Steve. He has to die. I'm not going to let you kill him. I'm not going to let you kill him. He was brainwashed. He didn't know what he was doing. It doesn't matter. And if you don't get out of the way, you're dead too. Show me somebody who's frothing at the mouth in a murderous rage. He can't be cool Robert Downey Jr.'s fucking swingers character all the time. He can't be the pickup artist all the fucking time. If you're going to give me somebody in a murderous rage, he has to actually look like he's in a murderous rage, not jokey, everything delivered hyper-verbally with no inflection in his voice way. And the fact that that's the choice they made in the acting, whether it was the Russo brothers who thought that was an okay performance, or Robert Downey Jr. insisting that that's the take he wanted to use, it was wrong. Human beings just don't act that way. So it took me out of the movie. I thought the sequence falls entirely flat after following a ridiculous explanation for why the Winter Soldiers were all dead. I just, at the beginning of the movie, superheroes are too dangerous and need to be controlled. At the end of the movie, it's about Tony and his pain. And I'm like, I go back to what I said about the Spider-Man Sam Raimi movies. You got to give me a little bit more than all he said, and this is a love story. This stopped being about the dangerous world of superheroes about 20 minutes into the movie. And that's all it became. And to me, that's not a good enough story. I think that's my biggest problem with this, is that at the end of all things, this became about Bucky killing Tony's parents and Tony sort of reaching the emotional end of his rope. I'm just not that interested. And what you gave me wasn't interesting to me. I already don't like this character because of the last movie we saw him in, where he's a psycho who created a murder bot and then invented a bunch of excuses, as to why it needed to happen or why he was right to do so. So a lot of people are sort of reacting positively to all that, or are not taking the kind of issues I am. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought the Russos lost the story at the end and sort of just like, well, we'll fucking Shakespeare this. Everyone does. So that's my biggest problem with it. If you have an issue with anything I've just said, now's the time. Other than that, I have nothing more to say about the end of it other than none of it works. I mean, some of the acting is fine. Some of the other acting that goes on is fine. The fighting itself is fine. It was entertaining. But, an entertaining fight amidst those kinds of narrative and acting problems doesn't really do it for me. That's what I watch pro wrestling for.
Yeah, how's that going for you?
That's a whole other issue.
Mark, this is the third new era of the last, 2 years. Don't you feel the difference?
I don't want to talk about it. Do you get what I'm saying, though, after I've explained all that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of it. I'm with you that Stark needs his performance, the way he emotes needs to be very, very different. Given what they've told us about him to that point even, there's a lack of internal consistency in the sense that you see him in previous scenarios kind of barely holding on. Anytime someone brings up Pepper and the fact that she left him, he gets a little bit touchy about it. He becomes extraordinarily defensive when Clint calls him on his BS. And you're actually given visual evidence of a man who is, at the end of his rope, and then when he actually slips off the rope, he doesn't behave commensurate with the way he should in that situation. In terms of how he emotes. I mean, the action in terms of, I'm going to freaking kill you. Yeah, that's fine. I get that. But the way the portrayal of it, not so much.
But do you see why I compared it to Batman v Superman? I said those characters were actually in the moment and believable. Superman's holding on to dear life and trying to say something, anything to get this maniac off of him. This maniac is momentarily stunned, and Clint doesn't quite know which way to turn, and is slowly starting to calm down. I believe Batman's rage in that scene. I believe Superman was legitimately frightened he was about to die, and more importantly, his mother was going to be left for dead. I do not believe Iron Man is that angry that his mother was killed. When he said that line was so bad, Rob. It was so bad. Flames on the side. No. I always have to Madeline Kahn. But sorry, Steve, he killed my mom. What are you, 12? Are you kidding me? You're a grown-ass man. What do you mean, sorry, Steve, he killed my mom? If you're going to say he killed my mom, you better be screaming it. You better be howling at the moon. Otherwise, don't fucking say stuff like that. That's a retarded line.
No, my gripe with, hey, get out of there. Get out of there. Sorry, my dog's getting into something. Now, my gripe with that whole Martha bit from Batman v Superman had very little to do with it in the moment, in the sense that, something kind of finally gets through to Batman. I don't mind that. I really don't. I threw out the whole, we just became best friends bit, because in the immediate aftermath of that, they behave as though suddenly we're best friends. That's my gripe with it. And again, I explained that in the Dawn of Justice review that we did. I accept that was, for whatever, for the various reasons, that was the one thing that broke Batman out of murderous rage. I'm not necessarily as okay with, one protracted fight sequence with a maniac monster later, Batman feeling that he failed Superman in life. Like, no, you have not earned the right to say that, you freaking hack. However,
without going on too much of a tangent here, because again, this is well-worn territory, would you have better accepted it had he said something of, you and I aren't done, but I'm not going to let an innocent woman die?
Yeah, that's so much more in character with what they had been doing to that point in the movie.
And then at the funeral, I don't like what he is or what he represents, but he didn't deserve to be killed by a monster.
Well, that or an admission that I was wrong, which was one of the things about that. I was very, very wrong about him, and I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life trying to earn his sacrifice in that moment. Something like that. I mean, they just made we talked about that. The big thing that you and I both agreed on with that movie was Dawn of Justice assumes so many facts not actually in evidence. So
back to this.
Yeah, no, I I'm with you. That delivery, there's actually a really good line that comes out of that fight sequence that is sadly misdelivered more by Tony than by Bucky. But as he's got him in a chokehold, and he's saying, do you even remember, killing my parents? Do you even remember them? And I can accept him not screaming at that moment, because when you're actually choking someone, you're generally tense, so you can't get the vocalization. And Bucky's response is, I remember all of them. And I liked that. I liked that bit. It reminded you that, Bucky at this point is a very traumatized, very tortured character.
He has a better line earlier in the movie where he kind of looks at Steve and says, Steve, am I really worth all of this?
I'm not sure I'm worth all this to you. And no, I mean, under slightly different circumstances, you probably wouldn't be, but as things stand, you are. All right. That's, again, I'm kind of with you as far as that ending sequence goes. There's a few ways to do that much better. Martin Freeman, I mentioned, kind of wasted in his role as the new Agent Phil Coulson, I think is kind of where they're going with that. Very different character, but if you need a baseline for what they're kind of doing with him, I think that's accurate. But Martin Freeman's a very good actor. He'll be fine. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for this one as far as critiques go.
I don't remember if we reviewed The Winter Soldier or not, because I know we started doing these the year Maleficent came out.
I don't think you and I reviewed The Winter Soldier.
Okay. I think if I had, I would have said at the time, The Winter Soldier was a very, very tight plot. It was very, very well acted. The motivations of the villain, who is Robert Redford, make all kinds of sense. We talked about this when we looked at Marvel villains for your Everybody Loves a Bad Guy podcast, that he's one of the few who actually had a workable plot that made sense. This movie failed to live up to The Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier still stands, by and large, the best Marvel movie to date. In our little side chat, we talked about which ones, what are our top 5 Marvel movies, or top 3, just for the sake of brevity. The Winter Soldier is still my number 1. Guardians of the Galaxy is number 2 for me, because I like a nice fun space opera.
You keep trying to tell me the Star Wars movies are good.
Shut up. I would say Winter Soldier, number 1. Guardians of the Galaxy, number 2. This is probably better than Age of Ultron, but not by much. I mean, we're talking I would almost say I like them equally. But if I had to list them, I would list this one first, just because the action sequences I thought were better. The airport scene is probably the best action sequence in any Marvel movie to date. But as I said before, so fucking what? An action sequence does not a movie make. It's a part of a movie, and without it,
you're gonna make some people mad when you say that, and then you're gonna be positive about the Bourne films.
Explain yourself. I don't understand what I did wrong just now.
Sorry, just all the people who are fans of the Jason Bourne movies. I don't know. I don't care for them.
I don't think I like them either. I mean, we're gonna review them on Long Road to Ruin, so I'll be able to look at them a little bit more closely. But I find them to be very constipated narratively, and again, fighting for fighting's sake is not interesting to me. So,
well, that and I find them all to be the very same movie. I mean, virtually down to the order in which we go: foot chase, hand-to-hand combat, gun shooting sequence, car chase, finale.
So that being said, like I just said, action for the sake of action without a strong narrative supporting it is essentially to me like watching porno. it's just stuff happening on a screen with nothing supporting it, and it's not that interesting. Once you get over the visual novelty of it, or the visual excitement of it, it's just kind of there. Your thoughts? Your conclusive thoughts, and then we'll get into numbers and whatnot.
I don't actually have a ranking of Marvel movies. I just haven't done it. As far as which ones do I like, which do I think is the best, which ones do I like. I haven't watched all of them critically necessarily. I would probably say this one would make the top 5, but there's a couple of movies within the Marvel pantheon that I feel very differently about than the general populace.
I know I don't hate Iron Man 2 like everybody else does.
I don't hate Iron Man 2 all that much. I really like First Avenger. I also really like the first Thor movie. And I know people can roll your eyes all you want. I didn't care much for Iron Man 3, but not for the same reasons that most people did.
All right. So with all that being said, let's get into the next portion of our review here.
This thing made what, $161 million just in the U.S. and
right.
worldwide it's over 700.
Up here. Can I do this without you?
I'm guessing. I am
shoving
guessing.
me out of the way. Jesus.
Tell me how right I am.
Domestic. I'm looking at Box Office Mojo as of today. So as of May 10th, 2016, the domestic cume is $206 million. Foreign, it came out in most of the rest of the world before it came out in the U.S. To date, $531 million. For a total worldwide $737 million. It is currently the number 5 movie in worldwide grosses behind Zootopia, Batman v Superman, The Jungle Book, and Deadpool. Now, for all of you, gay cowboy eating pudding types, for all you indie snobs, for all you people who hate Disney and you know who you are, blink, blink. Zootopia, Jungle Book, and Captain America, 3 Disney movies, 3 spaces in the top 5.
Well, 2 of those are deserved at least.
Also, 3 comic book movies currently in the top 5: Batman v Superman, Deadpool, and Captain America. And I'm sure by the end of its run, Captain America will be the number 1 movie in the world. Domestically, as things stand right now, Deadpool is the number 1 movie in America in terms of domestic ticket sales. Then Zootopia, then Batman v Superman, then The Jungle Book, and then Captain America is number 5. So number 5 in both worldwide and domestic. Go ahead and
move
that.
rapidly up that list.
If you want to go ahead and break down some more of these numbers, some of the records that it broke, go ahead. I have to go AFK for just a moment.
I don't have a whole lot of numbers on records it's broken, but again, 160 some odd million, 180 million domestically opening weekend. It's a pretty big opening. I mean, it's absolutely massive in a lot of ways. Let's see. I mean, like Mark mentioned, it's number 5 already. It's going to go up that list very, very quickly. It was also released in the United States last. I'm not sure why they went that way, but it currently has the largest opening day in Mexico. It did 7.3 million in Mexico, and open day of 2016 in France. The second largest opening day in Brazil and the United Arab Emirates. The largest superhero opening day in the Netherlands. The largest superhero opening in both Turkey and Ukraine. Opening weekend records in Brazil, Mexico, the Philippines. This thing's a hit everywhere. It's just absolutely massive. And it's probably going to stay relatively massive. The critical response to this movie has been generally positive. A lot of the negatives that you're going to find from other critics center more around this is kind of a been there, done that plot. And that's a valid criticism in the sense that basically all of the Marvel movies have kind of the same plot. They're not identical, but there's a whole lot of overlap, a whole lot of similarity. And I think there's a bit of critical fatigue as far as that goes. But I saw this thing at 10:30 on a Tuesday night, and that theater was over 3/4 full. That's substantial. Again, this is Tuesday. Some people might have already seen this and are seeing it a second time, and my dog gets to be quiet now. Good doggy. Quiet time. But, I mean, again, critically, it's in a weird spot in the sense that I feel so much of the criticism that has been directed at it is not of the most valid variety. And, I mean, you guys who listen to this know we all get a kick out of me banging my head against a wall every time we look at some of these critics that just don't quite seem to be able to divorce their expectations from what a film actually is. Let me see. See if there's anything else financially worth talking about here. Yeah, the film was released in IMAX. It had a pretty good IMAX showing.
I'm back.
Okay.
Really quick, I have to go back to the movie for just 1 minute because my immediate tweet on Twitter when the movie was over was, "The plot is a whore." And someone said, "Jesus, what the hell does that mean?"
It's really, really overused.
Well, I once yelled at you about, like, oh my God, overused plots. And I'm like, hey man, there are only so many plots in the world. And I stand by it.
Well, there's a difference, and I talked about this a little bit while you were gone. There's a substantial difference between, well, okay, I can make this look like Shakespeare because I can do that with just about anything. And, this plot plays a whole heck of a lot like those 3-4 other Marvel movies.
Well, we talked a little bit about, like, this could have been purely driven by a character who already hates one of the metahumans and having that hatred sort of boil over, and now he's given enough power to do something about it, and so he does. And he's manipulating things behind the scene to create a world that he envisions as a better world, one with metahumans in chains, or at least bound to the law. Instead, we have another stupid revenge story. Wah, you killed my family, so I'm going to get you back in some way.
Yeah,
That's
dare I
what
say, just like Iron Man 2, wah, you stole my father's work, or Iron Man 3, wah, you ignored me and were mean to me, or Thor 2, wah, you were responsible for the mass genocide of my people, and wah, you're my big brother, things always work out for you, why don't people like me? Never mind his legion of fangirls.
So my point is, when I say the plot is a whore, at this point, one man's revenge is the driving force behind this movie is so overused, and it's so overused in Marvel movies alone that I'm just tired of it. When I thought his plot was ultimately to get the Avengers to tear each other apart and bring the super soldiers under his wing, because whatever his reasons were, I was into the movie. When I found out that all he wanted to do was kill him, and the only thing he was interested in was revenge for his family being killed in Sokovia, which wasn't the Avengers' fault. I mean, I was like, oh, come on. Those are the things that made me hate the end of the movie. It was like, loved the beginning, really loved the middle, got to the end and wanted to throw my fucking shoes at the screen. Just
Mark, what is your obsession with throwing stuff at the movie screen?
A big fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show and the audience participation part of it. All right, let's. So next week it should cross the billion. If it doesn't cross next week, it'll probably come close.
Inside of 3
crossing.
weeks. Easy.
Yeah. Well, next week its only big competitor is Money Monster, which we'll be reviewing.
It's not a competitor in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
It's not competitive in any way, shape, or form. So.
I'll give you all a preview of our review of that movie. All right, y'all ready for this? Because I'm going to do this again. I will say this again virtually word for word after I've seen the movie. I would bet money on it, barring, this movie not sucking. If you're actually interested in watching a film about financial crisis and about, how that works, save the money that you would spend on a theater ticket to watch George Clooney's chin and Julia Roberts' mouth battle over who is bigger on screen. Go rent The Big Short, watch that, you will be eminently happier. It is a much, 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 much better movie.
I intend to have a lot of fun at this movie. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to being asinine, but I enjoy good schlock, and schlock that has to do with money suits my fancy. So
my biggest regret about that movie is Julia Roberts. I generally find her terrible.
I liked her and Erin Brockovich. I don't hate women the way you do, or black people.
I don't hate women. I hate people.
Okay. All right. Are you ready? We need theme music for this.
We really do.
We need.
I would accept just the sound of a trap door dropping. It just makes me want to hang myself.
Let's see what we got here. Here. No, hang on. How about
riveting radio here?
I know, right? Okay. I'll just play a little bit of this. So this is until we come up with something better. Here's our theme music for What Did the Critics Say?
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
See, it's funny because it came out that Disney was paying critics.
Oh, did it really?
I don't know. I heard that being tossed around recently.
Whatever. All right.
Internet rumor.
So here are some rotten reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. I'll be curious before we start this. People who obviously I do respond to people on Twitter. I get most of my responses on Twitter, not necessarily Facebook, though occasionally, people will contact me on Facebook too. I'm curious to see when people listen to our reviews if they tune out during this part or if they hang on because they want to see how bad you're going to react to these things. Basically, I'm asking people to send me feedback. This bit, love it or hate it. Let's move on. All right, so Michael Fairbanks of The Young Folks says, this movie is so toothless. How toothless is it? This is so toothless that you'll probably pay for your ticket in a paper cup on the side of the road. It's so concerned with keeping everything in line for future movies that it ultimately takes no risks. Yeah, I thought at least they'd kill War Machine.
My brother saw this before I did. Now, I have a very different relationship with spoilers than most people. If I'm going to read a book, see a movie, watch a television show, whatever, if I know in advance I am doing this 100%, then I don't care. I absolutely do not care in the sense that I'm going to watch this either way. So I see no harm necessarily. Now, I know other people are different. And I know there's a rather substantial contingent of people who follow my coverage and read reports on MMA events that wonder why is the winner of the main event put in the title. Well, I'm going to go out here on a minor limb and say, every major sporting event that is reported on has the winner in the title of it. Just a minor limb there I'm going out on. But I understand that for whatever reason, there's a lot of people who feel differently than I do. But my brother, after he saw it, I mentioned that, I'm going to see it. He talked briefly about it, and I asked him point blank, is anyone going to die? And he says, he told me, if you don't care about spoilers, and again, he knows I don't. That's a general rule. He told me nobody died, and I kind of went, really? I mean, this is not the safest Marvel movie that exists. It's still very safe. I expected someone to die, and I actually think it's a valid point he brings up in the sense that this movie is very much there to set up some of the conflict that is going to lead into the Infinity Wars.
All right, let me stop you there. Had I produced or written this movie and I worked for Disney, so I would have had slightly more power with controlling the narrative. Because I guarantee you the person at Disney was like, you can't kill people. Children will see this movie. What do you think you are? Fucking DC at Warner Brothers? No. If I had been a Disney executive and saying, listen, you guys need to kind of turn up the heat in this movie, Tony Stark would have been alone at the end. Don Cheadle would have been dead. Here's how I would have ended the movie. I was okay with Captain America's breaking out Falcon, Ant-Man, and Hawkeye. Not okay.
No, he got Wanda too. He got all of them.
No, I know. I was okay with those three because I wouldn't have had them there. I would have had them in a regular prison because they don't have any powers. I would have had her stuck there, and I would have had him say something like, "At some point, we got to get Wanda out," and I would have left it at that. But I would have been okay with them three getting broke out of like a regular prison. On the other side, Spider-Man went home. Black Panther went home. Black Widow pretty much went on the run. We don't know where
she turned on Tony because she realized her turn actually makes the most sense out of anything in this movie.
Yeah, no, I was okay with. My point is, what she did was fine. She leaves. She goes wherever. You don't really quite know where she's going, but she's not with Tony at the end. Again, for the 48th time, Don Cheadle, dead as a doornail, would have had him killed. I would have had Vision go into space. I would have had Vision leave.
I was really hoping for Vision. That was my original thought with this, was Vision's got to leave. He's got to see this and go, yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm out.
And then in space he can be confronted by Thanos.
I would have added a subplot where he's starting to see the Black Guard, if they're going to have the Black Guard in it, or at the very least, see Thanos. I would have started having now people complained about this sort of thing in Age of Ultron, but here I think it would have made some sense for him to, like in other words, when he accidentally shoots War Machine, he's like, I got distracted because of Wanda. I would have handled that a little bit differently. I would have actually had him as he's focusing dead in on the Quinjet, I would have had him flash to something happening out in space, and I would have been building up to that throughout the movie and have him finally say, Tony, I've already killed somebody here. I don't know what's happening with me. I'm in danger, but this thing in my forehead, this means something, and I need to go figure out what it is and what I'm doing here, and I'm too dangerous among other humans to stay. And I would have had him go. At minimum,
he could go find Thor because the Asgardians know a little bit about the Infinity Stones.
Well, whatever, but I mean, he's gone. He'd have gone into space to figure out what the Infinity Stone was and why it's in his head and where these visions are coming from that he's having. And then Tony would have been alone at the end, and I would have just kind of a parting shot of him just sort of sitting there, holding something that would have said like Avengers. And this sort of look that he broke the thing that he was trying to solidify. that's how I would have ended the movie. And I think, well, that might sound a little depressing. I think it also would have been heavier, would have had more weight to it. The way that it ends, it's like, oh, well, okay. Your friend's walking, the Vision's reading the New York Times. You broke the Avengers, but you can put it back together again. It's fine. You still got some major pieces left. And then everybody else is in Wakanda. Like, oh, boo. That's the other thing. Probably would have killed the Winter Soldier and Steve and sorry, I went through this whole thing of how I would have broke them out. I actually might have left everybody in prison and had it end with Captain America being escorted into prison himself. I think it would have made the sort of sacrifice at the end of the movie a little bit more meaningful. But that's not the movie that they wanted to tell. So, I get this person's argument that the movie was toothless because they took a sort of a very heavy subject and kind of went, let's focus more on personal emotions.
Yeah, at the very least, Don Cheadle should have remained paralyzed and not.
Dead. Kill him.
Look, if you don't want to kill people because, again, kids see this, let's leave him paralyzed and not the recipient of Tony Stark's magic braces.
This comes from Ernesto Diaz Martinez of Cine Vertigo. Do you have a nice space ready to ram your head?
Yeah, sure.
You ready?
I'm about ready to complete the smiley face on my wall.
The latest Captain America adventure tells us is nothing more than a really long trailer for the new adventures of the new Spider-Man.
Oh, that is so asinine. That is so ridiculously off the mark. Yeah, they got the rights back to Spider-Man in some way because Sony kind of realized, hey, we suck at this. So you guys, you do this creatively and we will cash the checks. And that's a fine arrangement. I have no issues with that. If I get to avoid more mopey Spider-Man and crappy Electro villains and look, I'm the Green Guy. No, piss off. If I get to avoid that, I'm fine. This was not just an extended trailer for Spider-Man. They got him back, so they used him appropriately. Unless you happen to nod off at some point in the movie and only woke up after the credits to watch Peter Parker play with his new toy. If that's the level of professionalism you're bringing and that's all you got, then yeah, I can see where you might have missed the mark there just a little bit.
All right, this is Matt Patches from Thrillist. Slid off my senses like Thor's hammer across Cap's vibranium shield. The powerhouse hits land without so much as a scratch.
Well, you've clearly stretched the desire for metaphor there in your intro, buddy.
Oh, this one gets better. This next one.
I'd really rather you stop for my own sake.
Roger Moore of Movie Nation. Ponderous pandering and no Paltrow as Pepper Potts?
Oh, wow. Someone knows what alliteration is. Well, didn't you just get all the way through 4th grade?
Stephen Whitty of the New York Daily News.
Hey, let me address that real briefly. This is not a ponderous film. Again, there are some narrative issues. It's more contrived than it is ponderous. And Gwyneth Paltrow is not a great loss in the sense that A, her absence is actually addressed on screen in a meaningful way. And B, I don't know too many people who like Gwyneth Paltrow.
Stephen Whitty, New York Daily News, top critic. Bragging just a bit. See how many franchise characters we've got, DC. Marvel practically doubles the number of superheroes for this movie, and it's too much.
Okay. Let's discuss the notion of bragging here as it pertains to this. DC has the rights to all of their characters. They were never in such financial distress that they started selling them off to major studios in order to keep the doors open. You know why Marvel doesn't have the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, or X-Men? Because they were nearly bankrupt. DC doesn't have that problem. They want to make an Aquaman movie. They want to make a Flash movie. They want to make more Batman and Superman. Anyone in the DC universe, in all of their comic universe, they want to do anything with it, they can. They own those rights. The fact that they have woefully mismanaged their cinematic properties is an entirely different debate from what they have access to.
And David Edwards of the Daily Mirror, and we'll wrap this up after one or two more of these. One of Marvel's rare missteps lacking joy, excitement, and sense of anything being possible that's always been the studio's hallmark.
Whoa. Okay, first of all, this was not a joyless movie. And now some of that is your preconceived notions about what Marvel movies are. Some of that is what they have led you to believe with how they have conducted their movies to this point. They have a much greater track record of lighthearted fare. This was not joyless. There was plenty of laughs to be had in this movie. The notion that the sense of wonder on, well, you think heavy material like this might not necessarily be the most conducive to inspiring you can do anything? Sorry, I mean, is this a less joyful movie than, the first Captain America or Iron Man or, even the Thor movies? Sure. It's handling a much more serious material and doing so in an appropriate way. And there is still humor sprinkled without, but no. You, my friend, clearly just want your jokey Joss Whedon snappy dialogue covering up for massive plot holes.
I think to that end, we'll go with this last one and then get into plugs here. Catherine Monk of Express.com. Captain America Civil War is the movie equivalent of the all-dressed-up potato chip. A junk food classic that can't be denied, but can never truly satisfy our desire for something original.
Okay. Guys, I'm not entirely sure where to start here. This is not... Okay, now, if you want to compare bad movies that are entertaining to junk food, fine. People have done that forever, and you're not necessarily wrong. It's a fine comparison. You're going to trot that line out about a movie that actually tackled some issues regarding government oversight, emotional trauma, and... that's basically it as far as... But we're dealing with heavier material, senses of betrayal, the desire for revenge. These are heavy issues. And, I mean, unless you have a worse type of junk food comparison for the Turtles movie that's coming out in a couple of months, you have woefully missed your mark. The notion that there's nothing original here is also relatively mistaken. You don't see a large-scale superhero battle like this. I mean, look, the fight between Batman and Superman was okay, but it wasn't drawn out, and it didn't have nearly the kind of feel that this one did with its sense of, grandeur. This is much more original in the sense that you took the character that is responsible for the totality of this is Tony Stark and Iron Man. Without that, there is none of this to even discuss, and you turn him into a villain. He is functionally the bad guy for large portions of this movie.
And really, him and Ross were, I'll say it again, him and Ross were all the bad guy this movie needed.
I agree completely. And the point there is you don't see that. Oh, Batman wanted to kill Superman. Well, sure, but he was also, and it was made very clear to the viewers, he was being manipulated by evil Jesse Eisenberg. And so we all, as viewers, understand that, no, he's being manipulated. We have to feel bad for him. Tony Stark wasn't manipulated in that way. He just thought counter to Captain America, and they went at it. You don't get that. Ugh. People. Gah.
If Robert Winfree drank, this would be why, folks.
That's very true. Very true.
Overall, I would give this movie, with all of my complaints aside, I would give this movie a B+. Like I said, not as good as The Winter Soldier. I think in a lot of ways not as good as Age of Ultron. But better than most of the Marvel movies. Overall, I think I think when it did handle some of the bigger subjects, it handled it well. So I would absolutely. I'm going to not recommend going to go see it. Of course, I recommend going to go see it. If nothing else, go see it for the airport fight scene. That's the WrestleMania main event of this thing. That's the whole reason to go. If nothing else in this movie, the thing that the big attraction is the airport fight scene. So, Robert, your last words on this thing?
Yeah, it's not the worst movie I've seen this year. It's not the worst movie I've seen in the last 3 years. It's a pretty good movie. It's a solid outing. Again, is it perfect? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But on the whole, it's relatively well thought out. It's relatively well written. It's solidly acted, and most of the action is at least tolerable to it's somewhere between good and great. Or the opening sequence, which is a Bourne movie, and you kind of go, all right, we'll go along for the ride, and pray that there's not enough shaky cam to induce vomiting.
All right. We were supposed to have a Metal Hammer of Doom this week, but some scheduling issues prevented that from happening. So instead, this Friday, you're going to get a special treat. This Friday, here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, is the audio-only version of our source material special where we did Marvel trivia. If you can't wait for that, you're like, hey, let me get in on that shit. I want to see it now. I can't wait. Go ahead, go to my YouTube page, and you can see all of our beautiful faces. Mine, Jesse Starcher, Ronnie Adams, Jason Teasley. The only person you don't see is one of Jesse's friends who doesn't have a webcam, so he came up with Deadpool. But we did Marvel trivia. Fun was had, but we did about an hour of that. The video is on YouTube. The audio will be here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network this Friday at, I believe, 9 o'clock. Tomorrow night, Long Road to Ruin celebrates baseball this month. We'll be looking at the Bad News Bears trilogy, the movies from the 70s, not the one with Billy Bob Thornton.
Because Billy Bob does a really poor job approximating the great Walter Matthau.
Indeed. This Saturday, Robert Winfree will be doing coverage of Fabricio Verdun versus Stipe Miocic.
UFC 198. You can find me in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. Stop by, say hello. I appreciate it.
Tell them that we're all depending on them.
Yeah, nice to have a couple of those where no one was depending on me.
Next
this
Tuesday.
Sunday, Jeff Harris and I will be reviewing UFC 198. That is the only thing on the plate unless the UFC gets sold. As much as I tend to believe that's more for a minority stake than a majority, as most people are kind of crying about, but I don't know. We'll see. Barring
Tuesday,
major...
Metal Hammer of Doom is back. We will be reviewing Hate Breeds, The Concrete Confessional. Robert and I will be back on Wednesday to review Money Monster, and laughter will be had.
Feel my hatred burn through your ears. I have every intention and belief, based on everything I know about the movie to this point, that I am going to react very poorly to seeing it. So you can tune in and hear me yell about it.
All right. The Long Road to Ruin is yet another back-to-back episode. We'll be looking at the Major League trilogy featuring the pre-cocaine worn-out Charlie Sheen.
This was before he had AIDS.
Next week, the week after that, May 24th, Metal Hammer of Doom will be doing what we were supposed to do this past week. Vector, Terminal Redux. On Wednesday, Robert and I will review the Angry Birds movie.
Oh, yay.
The following week, Wednesday, June 1st, Robert and I will be reviewing the not currently critically well-rated X-Men Apocalypse. Not doing well. People saw it, basically said, been there, seen that, who gives a shit, is essentially the consensus among the reviews.
Yeah, because, dragging our fatigue with us into reviewing a movie is just so, professional when it comes to this.
So we'll be reviewing X-Men Apocalypse, hopefully doing a better job than the critics.
Well, I don't know. They might be right. I mean, we haven't seen it yet.
June 2nd is my birthday.
Yay.
We're going to spend it on Long Road to Ruin talking about the first 3 X-Men movies, X-Men X2 United and X-Men 3 The Apology.
So you got, what, half a good movie there?
And that's it for now. We'll be doing, as the summer rolls out, we'll be reviewing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Well, this weak crap. You got a mouse in your pocket?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody
smart enough to stay out of that one.
Everybody else associated with the Radulich and Broadcasting Network will be piling into the clown.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant the movie review, which I will not be associated with. The Long Road to Ruin one I do want in on very briefly. I know everybody wants in on it. I have a couple of points, and I really like the first movie.
Fine. We'll be reviewing Warcraft, Finding Dory, Independence Day, Tarzan, The Secret Life of Pets.
Have you seen the preview for Tarzan yet, Mark?
Yes, I have.
You cannot tell me that does not look terrible.
Ghostbusters, Star Trek Beyond, Born, and and Suicide Squad, I believe, is. Let me see. Is it the last movie of the summer? I'll tell you in a second.
I don't know.
So relax. I'll tell you in a second. Then we can end this podcast.
We'll find out. Then we can retire that obnoxious group of children singing.
No.
Yes, every time.
All right, our last 2 movies of the summer are going to be Suicide Squad, which is August 5th, and then Pete's Dragon, August 12th. And then we're done until September 23rd. So the official last movie of the summer is Pete's Dragon, which will be on August 12th.
Huh. Man, I'm getting the shaft this summer.
Why do you say that?
As you're sitting there talking about them, I just kind of realized, man, I'm not looking forward to almost any of those.
I sent you this list at the end of last year, beginning of this year. I don't want to hear shit from you.
No, not complaining in the sense that, wah, please let me out of it. I just, I looked at it and I agreed those are the movies we need to review, given how we do things here. We tend to look at major releases only. And those are the appropriate movies for the weeks they're in. And it just, as I've seen trailers for them and other things, and we've added a few, it just really kind of struck me for a moment that there's maybe 2 of those I would go see if I weren't going to review them.
I can't wait for any of them. I already told you, I'm predicting Ghostbusters is the second movie that makes $1 billion this year.
Guys, if you're out there listening, if you can hear me, do not see the new Ghostbusters. I will watch it, I will suffer for you, and I will then tell you again. Do not go see that movie. All right, I think that's it.
All right. Go ahead, take us home.
Okay. Did all the plugs already? Yeah, that's it. All right. Till next time, when Mark and I will mock George Clooney and Julia Roberts for disproportionately large chin and teeth, respectively. And Mark, I know you're okay with Julia Roberts and George Clooney existing, but come on now, you can't tell me that woman's mouth is natural.
I like Turner and Brockovich.
That's not what I said.
I like the money pit.
Oh, God. Yeah. All right, so for Mark Radulich, moonlighting as Peter Griffin for the purposes of this discussion. I'm Robert Winfree. I'll see you all next week to lambast Clooney and company. Until then, please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.